Hey Wolfpack, and welcome back. I hope your week has been well. Today, we're back with more online dating stories. I know I haven't done some since the middle of last year, so I'm kinda happy to get back to this. So, with that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. This is totally Stephen Amell, and he doesn't have a Grindr, Alec teased, as I showed him the guy who had just messaged me. Well, I don't know who this guy is, but I think I need to look up this Stephen Amell feller, I said jokingly. I had received a few messages from this profile before. They always said the same thing. Downtown for business, looking for NSA fun. I usually ignored them, but he was persistent. After being made aware of the fake profile pic, I responded. So, why the fake pic? Are you some kind of chud? A few minutes later, I got the response. I bet you think you're so clever, sitting there with your twink friend laughing at my expense. I put down my phone and looked at Alec before saying, he's here. This guy is a creeper. For the most part, the coffee shop was pretty empty. There was an older woman sitting in the corner with a laptop and a barista sweeping the floor on the other side of the room. Alec nodded and we left. We had walked a few blocks before my phone vibrated in my pocket, and the message read, I love it when they play hard to get. I thumbed through the app for a second and tapped the button that read, no thank you. I looked at Alec and smiled as I said, well, that's taken care of. I blocked the bastard. We finally made it back to our apartment. Alec went inside the kitchen to make some coffee, and I plopped down on the couch and pulled up Real Husbands of Hollywood on the DVR. As I laughed and watched Kevin complain about his wife, my phone vibrated. The message was from a blank profile and said, you can't ignore me. He shared his location. He was in my apartment building at the time. I shouted for Alec, but he stayed in the kitchen. So, I shouted again. Alec! Get your ass in here, I'm scared! No response. I walked over to the kitchen to see Alec lying on the floor. It looked like he had been hit in the head with a hammer. Blood pooled on the floor next to his head. As this gruesome scene sank in, I heard my phone ring. I couldn't help but start crying. As the song Roar by Katy Perry played in the background, I looked down at my recently murdered best friend. It was his ringtone. I rushed back into the living room to answer my phone. The caller ID read, Alec. Hello? I said. A scruff voice responded, Hey, come to the bedroom. We've got the place to ourselves. I'm straight. I swear I really am. I'm also broke. My hobbies are quite expensive though. As an 18-year-old, I have a few options. I could get a job at the local diner, or a Kroger, or, as I decided, I could sell myself on Grindr, the world's largest gay dating site. All I had to do was download the app, upload a picture, a shirtless pic of me at the beach with my ex, my dirty blonde hair blowing back in the wind. Specify my stats, 6'3", 205, toned white, cis male. Set my name to straight for Jen, and I was off. Within minutes, my inbox blew up. For some, there was a certain allure of hooking up with a barely legal straight guy. For others, the only way they would get a hot guy is if they paid. Mostly older guys, but some in their late 20s, as one's desirability increases exponentially after they cross 25, and a few from younger college-aged guys, mostly chubby or with bad skin, but a few who were pretty decent looking. On a good night, I could easily clear $1,000, in cash or through Venmo. The IRS wasn't getting any of that. Risky for sure, but I was on prep and used protection. My biggest fear was getting caught up in a police sting, but the local department seemed to have bigger problems to worry about. One night, a few months after I started, I received a message from a guy with the name Player, but after examining his profile, I highly doubted that he was a player. His profile picture was a shirtless mirror selfie in a filthy bathroom with a face cropped out. His profile claimed that he was 54, 6'3", and 250, but judging from his photo, which resembled Jabba the Hutt, I guessed that he shaved at least 200 pounds from his weight. I wondered why he even had a picture. Most of the fat old guys I encountered just had a blank profile. Player. $750? What for? That was way more than I usually got offered, but this man literally repulsed me. I could afford to be picky. To pour water on me, is that a euphemism for something? I had two ideas of what he might want. Question mark. I sighed. Not only was he ugly, but he was stupid too. What do you mean by pour water on you? Just that I have a bucket and you pour it on me. I pay and you leave, like 5 minutes. Where are you at? Here. He sent me his GPS coordinates. It was a small town in northeast Ohio, over an hour away. That's really far away. 1,500? 2,500. 2,000. That's literally all I have. Deal. I'll see you in about 90 minutes. I met a lot of weird people on Grindr, but this was by far the weirdest. I wondered if it was a joke or a sting. I was pretty sure there wasn't anything illegal about dumping a bucket of water on someone. A prank was much more likely. Who would pay $2,000 to have water dumped on them? There were lots of strange fetishes I discovered, but this one was a first. Furthermore, who from the Rust Belt could afford to waste money like that? You could probably pay someone $5 to do that. I considered not going, but the allure of $2,000 was too much to resist. In case he was luring me in to attack me in some homophobic hate crime, I had a folding knife with a 4-inch blade, legal in Ohio if not concealed. I headed east on I-80 in the BMW 330i that my parents got me for my 16th birthday. Selling the car would have helped my financial issues, but I had too many good memories in it. After about an hour, I pulled off the interstate onto a 2-lane road, passing houses with foreclosure signs out front, boarded up businesses downtown, and a Walmart, the only place in town with signs of life. I passed men walking alongside the sidewalk, wearing ratty jackets, pushing shopping carts filled with all their worldly possessions. I passed churches of various denominations: Church of God, Church of Christ, Church of Nazarene, First Primitive Baptist Church. I passed an old Catholic cathedral, the largest of all the churches that I had passed. A handsome red brick structure with 2 towers topped with domes and crosses. I imagined what it was like 100 years ago, when on a Sunday it would be full of immigrants from Italy and Poland and Slovakia, joined together in worship. Tonight, it looked abandoned. Its stained glass windows shattered, its front door hanging from its hinges. Soft light poured out of the entrance, probably from a homeless encampment. As I neared the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ, my headlights illuminated a cop car parked in the parking lot. I turned on cruise control and slowed down to 35. I thought I was clear, but about a quarter of a mile past the church, I heard the sirens and saw the flashes in my rearview mirror. Shit. I pulled over. Thankfully, I had cleared my car out. I put the knife on the passenger's seat so he couldn't bust me for carrying a concealed weapon, and turned on my iPhone's camera and aimed it towards the window. I looked at the cop as he approached. Looked to be about 65, pudgy and bald, with a brown walrus mustache. He approached the driver's side of the car, and I rolled the window down halfway. There are only a few people in this town that drive Beamers, and I know all of them. What brings you here? I could see the tobacco juice swirling around his few remaining yellow teeth as he talked in a hillbilly drawl. Probably one of the Southerners who moved from Appalachia to Ohio to work in the factories or coal mines. They came up Route 23, expecting the promised land, but instead traded one world of misery for another. Can I ask why I'm getting pulled over? Because you were swerving. Now, tell me why you're here. He spat a stream of tobacco juice on my car. I needed to go for a drive to clear my head. Let me see your license and registration. I handed them to him, and he returned to his car. You came a long way for a drive, don't you think? He asked once he returned. I'm not lying. You always have a blade with you when you're out for a drive? Even a day-old black person could tell you were full of shit. What are you here to get? Meth? Heroin? Pills? Sell it to your rich friends back at home? I swear, sir, I'm not. I'm also recording this confrontation, I said, pointing to my phone. He paused for a few seconds. Here's what you're gonna do, rich boy. You're going to delete the recording, and after tonight, I never want to see you in this town again. 11 people in this town have overdosed and died this year. The youngest was 14, and the oldest in her 50s. That may not seem like a lot, but our town has had less than 10,000 souls. And these are just the ones who have died. You have a pretty face. You don't want to lose it. After he watched me delete the video, and after I tipped him $200 for his friendly advice, I was off. 2 miles after I was pulled over, I turned into the gravel lane. Player's house should be nearby. It wasn't a house at all, but a trailer, not even a double wide, parked in an overgrown lot strewn with junky, rusty car parts, old mattresses, rotten wood, old tires in a boat hull, and other assorted shit. A large Confederate flag flew outside. I thought of bailing. There was no way this man could afford to pay $2,000. I doubted his trailer, with the siding falling off, was worth that much. But my curiosity, my stupidity, and my greed got the best of me. I pulled out my phone. I'm outside. Come in. Can you step outside first? A few seconds later, I saw the man waddle out, wearing a white undershirt that didn't cover even half of his gut and a pair of white boxers. I again considered leaving, but this man didn't look like a threat. If he tried to screw me or kill me, I could outrun him. Plus, I had my knife. As soon as I entered the lawn, I heard the howling of dogs. A huge mutt that looked like he had some German shepherd in him ran after me. He's friendly, Player said. He wasn't lying. The dog came over, his tail wagging. He sniffed furiously at my legs, and I petted him cautiously. As I neared the trailer, I was overwhelmed by a horrible odor. Smelled like a mixture of vomit, feces, urine, tobacco, alcohol, and who knows what else. I held my nose and entered. The place was an absolute pit, like something you'd seen on Hoarders. The carpet was stained and littered with dirty clothes, beer bottles, mildew, skull cans, old magazines, and other trash. 3 dogs roamed around, barking their heads off like maniacs, and I shit you not, there was a sheep. A fucking sheep sitting on the sofa. The only piece of furniture in the room. A Confederate flag was pinned to one wall, next to an Ohio State football poster. Player approached me, and I was surprised that he was as tall as he claimed on his bio. But he sure was a sad sight. Meth sores dotted his face. His wife beater and boxers were stained yellow and browns, like they hadn't been washed in months, with a smell to match. I'm sorry for the mess, he said. My wife died recently, and after that, I just fell apart. I'm really sorry. It's not your fault. He walked over to the Ohio State poster. I was on the '84 team, went to the Rose Bowl that year. I played on the offensive line with Jim Lackney. He went in the first round. A bunch of other guys went to the pros. There was hype about me. Started 4 games as a true freshman. I dropped out after the semester, moved back here where I was born and where I'll die. He started to tear up. Maybe this guy was just lonely. Maybe he just wanted to talk. Wasn't sure. But I did know that he didn't have $2,000. I'm right here, he said, pointing to the poster, to a player identified as R. Kosmiski, in between these 2 big old people. That's cool, you played at OSU, I said, not knowing really what else to say. I didn't want to tell him that I was a Michigan fan, that my parents went there. I've got your $2,000 right here, he said, handing me a stack of bills. I counted, and it was $2,000 bills. I wondered if they were counterfeit. All I got left from my wife's life insurance policy. He went on. You don't have to pay me, I said. No, take it. It doesn't matter. Just pour the water on me. There's a trash bin outside. I think I'd better be going. Please? Okay. I went outside and found the trash bin. It almost completely full. I carried it inside. It was much heavier than I thought. "That's not a sheep, you know. It's a goat," Player said, who had sat down on the sofa next to the buying creature. "But it doesn't matter. Just pour it on me." "Okay," I said, happy that he wasn't naked and that he didn't insist I get naked. I looked down at the trash bin. The water was cloudy and some dried leaves were floating on top. "The water's filthy." "That's fine." I picked up the trash bin and hurled it at the couch. He sat there soaked, silently staring at me for several seconds. "I'll be heading out," I said. "I'll just take 200. I dropped the rest of the bills on the floor and started walking to the door. As I neared the exit, I heard cackling coming from the couch. Not the type of laughter I expected from a big man like Player, but like a witch's cackle. I turned around. His bones cracked asunder and he began to dissolve. First, his legs turned to liquid, which pooled at the foot of his couch. Rainbow pools of swirling viscous fluids, then his torso. All the while he kept laughing. I stared, transfixed. His chest and arms were next. All that was left on him was his head, levitating in the air. He started to grin, a huge Cheshire cat grin that showed his one remaining tooth. His face held this grin for several seconds. His skin began to melt, and all that was left was his white skull. His white, grinning skull, and his eyes still in their sockets, the pupils dilating. Finally, his skull shattered into millions of specks of dust that floated across the room, landing by my feet. The dog stopped barking and the sheep lay down on the sofa, where Player once sat. I ran out of the trailer, leaving the money behind. I took one last look at the Quinton house, the Confederate flag flapping in the gentle breeze. I drove home, convincing myself that I imagined the whole thing, but that night, when I opened the Grindr, I received a message from Player. "You forgot your money." I blocked him, but somehow over the next few months, he kept sending me messages from new accounts, always the same: "You forgot your money." Sometimes hundreds of messages a day. I eventually deleted the app and peddled my wares the old-fashioned way, on Craigslist, but Player found me there as well. His bleached white skull still haunts me every night in my dreams. I know one day that I must return to the trailer to collect the $2,000. Tinder is a funny place. Not as funny as in haha, but like strange, you know? People pretend to be so normal, but normal people don't need dating apps. Take me, for example. I was 29 years old and single for the first time since I was 11. Best believe I was fucked up. Me and my ex-wife got together when we were kids and finally had the balls to split up 17 years later. It wasn't what you would call healthy at all. People grow apart, especially if you get together before you've grown at all. You don't really think about it, but a lot of things change when you get divorced. Living alone is fucking weird. Even more so sleeping by yourself after years of company. But the hardest thing is trying to adapt to the ever-changing dating world. After some convincing from a friend, I decided to make a Tinder account. Why? I don't know. I had the perfect dad bod, scruffy beard, and pickup truck. Why would someone pick me out of a million profiles? I guess I spoke too soon because soon after, my inbox swarmed with messages. Apparently, I'm exactly what every woman wants, but one in particular stuck out. Fiery red hair with these dimples. Her profile said she was an addict of horror movies and photography. This stuck out because my ex-wife hated horror movies, and I have an undying passion for them. Honestly, in some ways, it was the main factor in our divorce. I'm sure my horror fans understand. So, I messaged her. 1-2, Freddy coming for you. Oh, I don't think I mentioned. My name is Freddy. So, I thought it would be funny, you know? The Freddy Krueger song. Anyways, she got the joke like I knew she would, and we just hit it off. After a few days, I got her number, and a week after that, we went on our first date. We had talked so much through text, I was afraid we wouldn't have anything to talk about in person, so I chose to take her to a movie. They also happened to be playing Lights Out, which looked and was fucking amazing. As the movie progressed, we slowly got more comfortable and close, especially at the part where the creepy demon woman was scratching on the floor. Jesus. It was around that time I decided to hold her hand. I just reached over and grabbed it. After a minute, I looked over at her to see her smiling. After returning a smile, I looked back towards the movie screen. Just then, a bright light flashes, blinding my peripheral and causing the theater to fill angry shouts. I look over, and she's sitting there with her phone up and takes another photo of us not giving a shit about all the people yelling. She turns to me wearing the same smile from a moment ago and says, "Our first time holding hands." Honestly, it did weird me out, but I just chopped it up to she's just crazy. But listen, all women are crazy, and it's just to what extent. You have to choose your crazy. My ex-wife would make fake social media accounts to get me to cheat on her with herself. This girl likes to take pictures. I can deal with that. The rest of the movie went fine. I purposely tried to avoid any dating milestones until it was over. I got her home, and it's time to say goodnight, and I think long and hard about my next move. Do I try to kiss her? I mean, she's gorgeous and was cool most of the night, but would our kiss just be interrupted by the flash of her camera? She stands there smiling at me, and I know what she's waiting for. That's when I look down and notice her phone in her hand. She is literally prepared to take this picture. I know, I stood there for an abnormal amount of time, but eventually, I go in for a kiss and sure enough, I'm blinded once again by the flash of her phone. The kiss ends a bit flat after the interruption, and she giggles while saying, "Our first kiss," as she admires the photo. She tells me to text her and goes inside, leaving me completely speechless on her stoop. Well, what the fuck do I do now? I thought. Deciding such a flaw could be ignored, I continued to see her. After 2 weeks, her photo gallery had filled up with photos of things like our first car ride together, the first cuddle session, and first dinner date. But there were a lot of stranger things too. Like the first time we looked at each other for even longer than 10 seconds, and a picture of the first time that I took our picture, which she made me take, so she could take that picture of me taking the picture. It was exhausting. Half of the time she'd take pictures for no reason. I would often catch her out of the corner of my eye just standing there waiting for me to turn so she could take a picture. I had enough. The day I decided to break it off with her, we had taken the subway downtown to go to the museum. You can only imagine how many fucking pictures she took in there. I planned to do it on the way home when we stopped on the platform. At least there would be people around in case this crazy girl tried to kill me. Unfortunately, I'd never get the chance. After having to wait and be the last people off, we rushed to slip through the closing door only to barely make it. That's when we realized her long red curls were stuck in the door. I desperately tried to free her as I pulled on her hair and pounded on the window begging for someone to help. The people on the train tried to pry the door open, but once the train started moving, she lost her footing and was dragged off the rest of the way, disappearing into the tunnel. I turned to the crowd that stared at the man who couldn't save the girl. As you can imagine, it fucked me up a little. I didn't want to be with her, but I definitely didn't want her to die. Even though we saw each other for a few weeks, I was only actually in her presence maybe 5 or 6 times. I definitely hadn't met her family, but still felt obligated to go to the funeral. I had no clue what to expect, but when I got there, it seemed like a perfectly normal viewing. A sign-in book, arranged flowered, the whole shebang. I stepped up to the casket to pay my respects. Of course, it was closed. She had been dragged away by a train. There's no way they could have it opened. My thought was interpreted by a blinding flash to my right. I turned to look out of reflex, and there she was, standing with her phone out. Her gorgeous red hair draped down her body that looked as though it had been priced back together like a jigsaw puzzle. Some pieces obviously misplaced. The camera flashed again, and she was gone. I'm not one of those people to believe in ghosts, but I also know that her death didn't affect me to the point that I'm going fucking crazy. Yes, we were dating, and yes, I didn't save her, but I did try, and it was in no way my fault, so forgive me for not being messed up over a situation where I tried my best, but just wasn't meant to succeed. The thing is, she never went away. I mean, There are times where I don't see her, but if anything important happens, she's right there to take a picture. The call I received about my new job, she was standing in the kitchen with her phone up before the phone ever rang, her body disfigured and gray. When I met my new wife, she was there as well. Also, on our first date, and even the first time we made love, she was right there in the corner, the flash becoming more and more normal. When my son was born, she was in the room taking the first photo. Even though we never get to see the photos, it's kind of like having our own family photographer. My wife can see the flash, but she can never see the mangled form just to the left of her, setting up the perfect shot. My son, on the other hand, usually notices her before I do. Even when he took his first steps, he was walking towards her. One thing I'm sure of, that had to be the perfect photo. Thanks for listening, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your own story, the links for my email and subreddit will be down below. I've also created a Discord, so if you want to join that, the link will be in the description down below as well. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And with that said, have beautiful nightmares, and I will see you next time.